Ever since Nightreign was released, Ironeye very quickly became a fan favorite, mainly because he's a super cool ranged-based character using the power of his bow and arrows to deplete the enemy's health bars, whilst also having skills that can allow for some damning damage numbers. So if you're looking to jump on the Ironeye hype train, let's take a deep dive into this character. So yes everybody, welcome back to another video on this channel, where today we are taking a deep dive into Ironeye, of course, who is a fantastic character to use and is probably top of the tree when it comes to ranking the characters in this game for a lot of people. But just before we delve into all of the cool features about this character, I wanted to let you guys know about Mobalytics. And the reason for this is because they actually go hand in hand with these ultimate guides that we make around these characters, because Mobalytics actually provides a one-stop shop for all the information around all of the characters, as well as the steps needed for like the remembrance guides. So essentially, if you ever wanted like a written version of the videos that I make, Mobalytics is a perfect source for that, where you can obviously go to them, see all the information written down, and even check out all of the background info, like all of the FP, stamina, and HP stats for all the characters. And you can even check out different builds that have been created by people like myself and others, obviously showing off some of the best relics to be using, and also giving more detail on how to be successful during your runs using whatever build you decided to click on. So if you want to check that out for yourself, definitely click the link down below. It'll be in the description, because it's super handy and I'm definitely going to be using this when making the ultimate guides. As I say, they basically go hand in hand. So continuing on with this Ironeye guide, I of course do want to show you the stats, which are the following. He's basically got C's across the board, apart from stamina and arcane being a B, dexterity being an A, and then intelligence and faith being a D's. And if you initially look at that stat spread, you might be thinking, hang on a second, how is this guy going to do a whole bunch of damage? Obviously, bow and arrows throughout the From Software games have been notoriously rubbish, or at least nothing compared to like the great swords, claw weapons, fist weapons, and so on and so on. But obviously in Nightreign, things work a little bit differently, and because of exactly that, bows are actually a really kind of cheap way to beat the game or go through the game, because obviously what you can do is just stay at range, pummel your enemies with your bow and arrows, typically doing a considerable amount of damage, especially if you manage to shoot them in the head, which more often than not you will be doing just with a simple lock-on. So actually at first glance when you go, well, the HP isn't all that great, it doesn't need to be, because you're not really going to be anywhere near the enemy at all. And that goes for bosses as well, because the range on the arrows is actually deceptively quite good. The other main benefit of those stats that I showed you is the high arcane in it, because as you can probably tell from the footage in the background, if you ever find yourself a poisonous bow, scarlet rot bow, any kind of like ailment that's tied to your bow, you will be able to proc those really quickly, really safely, and that goes for both solo and co-op. Again, I'm not going to show too much footage of any other bosses, but Gaping Jaw is the second boss, which if you don't want to be spoiled, look away now. But a prime example of how good this can be is just constantly proccing poison on to Gaping Jaw, anybody that's weak to poison, and likewise with any other affinities like Sleep, Frost, Scarlet Rot, like I mentioned earlier too, which is just another version of poison. You can basically whittle your enemies down by shooting them from range, either doing that damage over time with the arrows themselves, or proccing those elements onto them, again giving you a bunch of damage whenever those procs do occur. But saying that, there are many things that can make this guy extremely potent and deal tons of damage, which are of course going to be his skills that we'll go to in a moment, because again, going through his abilities, his passive one is one called Eagle Eye, which works not only just for you but also any allies in your game. So again, if you're loading up with randoms or your friends, if you've got an Ironeye in your team, this Eagle Eye passive ability will basically increase the amount of items that you find from fallen foes. Now again, just to clear up what that means, it does not improve the rarity, it just improves your chance of getting those items. So let's say for example you find those wandering nobles around, which of course have a chance of dropping the noble slender sword. Eagle Eye will just basically boost your chance of getting that weapon or any items that are dropped by that particular enemy. It does not mean that they can suddenly drop something like the Darkmoon Greatsword or Eleanor's Poleblade blade, or any other kind of like legendary weapon or equipment. Again, this does not affect boss drops either, so it doesn't heighten the chance of like a purple or golden drop from bosses. It is just purely for base enemies throughout the game. So I must say this skill is probably one of the worst in the game, for a passive skill at least, because ultimately it doesn't really change anything or give you much of a benefit, because you're probably going to have a better weapon or enough items from chests and things like that. So yeah, Eagle Eye is kind of null and void. But for every bad skill like that, you then also have a tremendous skill, which is exactly what the marking skill is for Ironeye. When you use this skill, you will basically lunge forward at your enemies with the intent to cut them open, producing a weak point, to which if you carry on hitting your enemies whilst they have that weak point active, it will then break, causing a bunch of damage, which again varies depending on the enemy you've used it on. Some people, like the Nameless King for instance, who is in this game, take a ton of damage from this skill when the mark eventually gets destroyed. The other thing to note is whilst that mark is on your enemies, they actually take an additional 10% damage from whatever damage source you're doing to them. So whether that be Ironeye's arrows or your teammates' greatswords, or even their ultimates if they want to use it, and critical hits too. But as you're hitting your enemies, you're actually increasing the time that that debuff is there, so the time that that mark is still on them, and then once you've done enough damage to it, it will then break, either causing a mini stagger or a full-on stagger based on the amount of stance damage you've done previously, whilst also doing a butt ton of damage itself. So it's super useful to basically use this as much as possible, which is actually super viable as it's your character skill, which recharges really quick, and there's some relics out there that allow you to do 2 or hold up to 2 charges, allowing you to obviously do this multiple times in the same fight. Basically, with this skill and how quickly it charges, you should be using this as much as possible to basically always have a 10% damage buff against the enemies that are marked, and of course when you break it, do that incredible amount of damage, and also potentially stance break them too. But just also know you do have some form of iframes when using this move, so it can also come in very clutch. The iframes are very minimal. It's sort of like during the dash, so as you're starting it and when you finish, you're not going to be having any iframes during that, which is why it's crucial to maybe change your direction, especially if you're using this in co-op, because say if you start using this behind an enemy and you go all the way through them to their front and they're attacking one of your teammates, you might also get hit by that same move. So always try and learn to go sort of back in, back out, or to the left or to the right as you exit, so you don't get hit by any moves that weren't supposed to be heading in your direction anyway. But if anybody does take too much damage and maybe goes down, the single shot ultimate art can help you out with that too. Because not only is this a very potent and powerful shot that pierces through all types of enemies, terrains, and structures, yes, it does do that, this single shot will break enemies' stances and also break night bosses out of any like final moves they're doing. But again, you've probably seen many clutch clips where somebody has used this shot to not only do something like that, but also maybe get some teammates up that down, because I believe if you do hit your friendlies with this, it will get rid of 1 full bar. And then obviously where Ironeye's got a bow and arrow, you can kind of finish off the job if they had 2 or 3 to begin with, shooting them from range, getting them up, and being a really cool support class whilst also doing devastating amounts of damage. But if for whatever reason you get sick and tired of using the bow and arrow, where you've got such a good stat spread in dexterity and also arcane, Ironeye actually gets the best out of weapons like the Reduvia if you find it, Bloody Hellis, Rivers of Blood, Eleonora's Pole Blade, and basically any other status based melee weapon that is also around DPS. So if you find those weapons in your expedition, you can have those in your back pocket to also deal a ton of damage. But realistically, the bow and arrow is going to keep you safe. You can keep tickling away at your enemies, doing a load of damage over time, getting your ultimate gauge filled up, whilst also trying to make use of the marking skill that you have. It's just a really fun character to be using, which is why everyone rates this guy so highly. But with all that said, that is everything you need to know about Ironeye. And where would you put him in your own rankings? I don't know how much you guys have played of this game, or if you've used every single character so far. He's definitely a top 3 character for me. He's definitely up there with both Raider and Wilder. But I'll be honest, pretty much all the characters are good if used correctly, which we are going to be going through the rest of the characters very soon. So if you want to stick around for more videos like this, then definitely make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and turn on those notification bells so you don't miss out on those future videos. And of course, if you've enjoyed this particular video around Ironeye, be sure to also hit that like button, because not only does it show me that you enjoy this type of content, but also lets me know that you want to see the rest of the videos around all of the the rest of the characters in Nightreign, so any likes and support would be greatly appreciated. But realistically, that's all I need to say. Go and have an absolute blast with Ironeye. Let me know how you get on if you do happen to use him. But I guess for now, I'll catch you in the next video of whatever it is that we make. Bye bye!